Montana Territory, summer of 1879. The sun had not yet risen when the gunshots echoed through the Bitterroot Valley, and by the time the birds started calling, the cabin at the edge of the tree line was burning. Beatrice Janev stood barefoot in the ashes of her old life. Her dress was torn, her face streaked with soot, and the left side of her face scarred from a fire 3 years ago was turned toward the trees, not the men who whispered behind their hands in town. They called her too scarred for any man, too broken to bother with. But she had lived through worse than their words. She had also survived the loss of her 2 sons. Zeke, Xander, she whispered into the smoke that still clung low to the ground. Her voice cracked. Her boys had been taken. The men who burned her cabin had come for the remaining money her late husband left behind, and when they did not find it, they took the only thing of value left to her. Her children. The last one to see them had been old Widow Hobb, who lived up past the creek. Riders headed south, she had said, her voice shaking. 6 of them. One had a red bandana. Took the boys like they were sacks of feed. Beatrice did not cry. She did not beg. She just saddled the mule, packed a rifle, and rode out that same evening. Her scars pulled tight when she turned her head, but she had long since stopped flinching at the pain. 3 days later, somewhere near the southern edge of the territory, her mule went lame. She was walking alongside it, limping through the dust, when a rifle cocked from behind a stack of rocks. "That mule is about to drop dead," a deep voice said. She turned her head just enough to see him. Tall, lean, with a rifle resting easy in his hands and a weather-beaten hat pulled low. His name, she would later learn, was August Verran. He did not lower the rifle, but he was not pointing it at her either. "I will trade you water for your name," he said. "Beatrice Janev," she answered. He studied her face, and for a long moment he said nothing. Not in pity. Not in shock. Just quiet calculation. "I saw smoke 3 days ago," he said. "North of here. That your place?" She nodded once. "Your children?" She nodded again, faster now. He stepped down from the rocks, his boots stirring dust. "You are going to need a horse. And a man who knows the land." "I do not have money," she said. "I do not want your money." "Then what do you want?" He tilted his head. A good reason to do something right for once. That was how they started 2 strangers, one scarred by fire, the other by something he did not speak of. He gave her his second horse, a roan mare with a gentle gait, and they rode south together. August was not a man of many words. He watched the horizon the way a man watches for ghosts. But he listened when Beatrice spoke of her boys. Zeke was 10. Xander 8. Both with wild brown curls and stubborn hearts like their mothers. "They do not go quiet," she said. "If they are alive, they are fighting." He looked over at her. "They are alive." "How do you know?" "Because you are still standing." They rode long days, camped in silence. She cleaned her rifle while he cooked beans in a dented pot. At night, he never asked about her face. Not once. But she caught him looking sometimes, never with disgust. Just looking. Like he was piecing together something the world had missed. 4 days into the ride, they found a burned-out wagon near the river. Beatrice scanned the ground like a hawk. "Zeke's boot print," she said, pointing. "He drags his right foot a little." August crouched beside it. "They are close." That night, under a wide sky full of stars, she sat with her back to the fire. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone broken." She looked over her shoulder at him. "I was. For a time." He nodded. "Me too." She did not ask what broke him. She just handed him the last of the coffee. The next evening, they rode into a canyon pass and spotted smoke from a low campfire ahead. August stopped his horse and raised his hand. 6 men. One with a red bandana. Beatrice's fingers tightened around her rifle. "Wait here," he said, swinging down from his saddle. She followed him anyway. They crept along the rocks, and when they saw the boys tied near a wagon, dirty but alive, Beatrice's breath caught hard in her chest. She wanted to run, to scream, to tear the men apart. August caught her wrist. "We do this clean. You trust me?" She looked at him, really looked, and nodded. It happened fast. August shot out the lantern. Beatrice moved like a ghost, low and fast. She cut Zeke and Xander free while August held the men off with 2 well-placed shots. They did not stay to fight. They ran. The boys clung to her on the ride out, Xander sobbing against her spine, Zeke holding her waist tight. August rode behind, watching their backs. They rode until the moon was high, then made camp near a creek. The boys fell asleep curled against her sides. August sat across the fire, watching her hold them. "Thank you," she said, voice low. "I would have burned the world to get them back for you," he answered. She did not know what to say to that. So she just stared at him, the firelight catching the hard lines of his face, the quiet steadiness in his eyes. And for the first time in years she felt something stir in her chest that was not rage. Not grief. Something warm. She did not turn away when he looked at her. She let him see. All of her. And he did not flinch. Not once. Morning came slow, sifting pale through the cottonwoods that lined the creek. The boys still slept, curled close to Beatrice beneath a blanket that smelled of horse and dust. August stood downstream, shirt sleeves rolled, washing blood from his hands, the kind that comes from splinters and worn rope, not battle. He moved with a quiet that didn't ask for attention. Beatrice stirred a pot of oats over the fire. The silence was not awkward. It was full of things that didn't need saying. Zeke woke first, rubbing at his eyes with the back of his hand. "Mama," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "They tried to cut my hair." She ran her fingers through his curls. "They didn't." Xander sat up next, blinking at the trees. "That man, he shot the lantern." "August," she said. "His name is August." The boys turned to look. August was walking back with wet hands, wiping them on his trousers. He crouched near the fire but didn't say anything. Zeke studied him. "You a lawman?" "No," August said. "Then why'd you help?" August glanced at Beatrice. "Felt right." Xander tilted his head. "You gonna keep riding with us?" Beatrice stirred the oats. "That's not a child's question." Zeke didn't flinch. "You want him to?" She didn't answer right away. She handed them each a tin cup of breakfast instead. August leaned back on his heels. "There's a town west of here. About 2 days. Safer than this." "You know someone there?" she asked. "Blacksmith named Harlan. Owes me for a busted rib I stitched up last winter. He's honest." She nodded once. "We'll go." They broke camp after the boys finished eating. August lifted Xander onto the roan without being asked. Beatrice adjusted the saddle herself, checking every strap. She didn't trust anyone else's hands. Not yet. By midday, the trail narrowed through brush. August rode ahead, clearing branches with a blade that looked like it had been sharpened on stone. Beatrice rode near the back, Zeke behind her on the mule. They didn't talk much. The boys dozed against her back, worn thin from fear and dust. That night, they stopped at a dry bluff. No fire. August said the wind smelled wrong. Beatrice laid her sons down between her and a boulder, rifle tucked across her lap. August didn't sleep. He sat on a ledge above them, watching the dark. When dawn cracked wide and gold across the ridge, she climbed up to him. He didn't glance over. "You sleep?" "No." He nodded. "You thinking of going back north?" "There's nothing left there. You've got your boys. They need more than me. They've got more than you." She looked out across the valley. The sky was the color of copper washed clean. "You lost someone?" "Yes." "Children?" "No, then what?" He turned his face toward the light. "My brother. Long time ago. I let him ride ahead. Thought he'd be fine." She didn't touch him. Just sat beside him, knees drawn up. I stopped believing I could keep anyone safe after the fire. He turned slowly. You pulled them from it. All I could. August studied her face, not the scars, but her eyes. You ever heard of Dry Creek Hollow? No, it's west of Harlan's Forge. Empty land. River nearby. Good soil. Why are you telling me this? Because I've got a deed there. Never built on it. Thought maybe someday. That someday never came. You offering it to me? I'm offering it to us. She didn't answer right away. The boys stirred below, murmuring in sleep. August added, If you want. Only if you want. She looked at him, really looked, and saw no pity, no rescue. Just a man who had seen ruin and still wanted to build. I've never planted anything, she said. We'll learn. The sun rose higher, and the air warmed just a little. Zeke called softly from below, and Beatrice stood. I'll think on it, she said. August nodded. That's all I ask? She climbed down, boots sliding on gravel, and reached her boys just as they woke. She pressed a hand to Xander's cheek, then helped Zeke brush the dust from his shirt. August stayed above a while longer, watching the land stretch wide and open before them. When he came down, he didn't ask what she'd decided. He just handed her the reins and said, Let's ride. They reached Harlan's Forge at dusk, the light curling soft gold through the wood smoke rising from the chimney. The smithy stood at the edge of a clearing, its roof sagging in the middle, but the ground was swept clean and the fence around the corral stood straight. Horses shifted inside, their ears flicking at the scent of strangers. August dismounted first. He didn't knock, just opened the warped door and called out once. A man stepped out from the back room, broad-shouldered with an apron stained dark from years of soot and iron. I was starting to think you died in the mountains, Harlan said, wiping his hands on a rag. Not yet, August replied. Need a place to rest a few nights. Harlan's eyes flicked to Beatrice, then to the boys behind her. He didn't ask questions. Just nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the forge house smelled of horses and boiled barley. A cot sat against the far wall, and a trapdoor led down to a storm cellar. Beatrice helped Zeke and Xander onto a bench near the hearth, brushing the travel from their sleeves. August handed Harlan a wrapped bundle. For the rib. Harlan opened it, revealing a small tin of tightly packed tobacco. He grunted his thanks and turned to stoke the fire. That night, Beatrice spread out blankets on the floor. Harlan offered the cot to the boys, but Zeke shook his head. We sleep with Ma. August took the seat near the door, rifle resting across his lap. He didn't speak until the fire burned low. You ever think about what you'd do if you didn't have to run? He asked, voice barely above the crackle of coals. Beatrice didn't look at him. I don't have the shape for dreaming anymore. You could shape something new. She turned her face toward the dying fire. I don't know how. Neither do I. Harlan coughed from the other room. The boys shifted beside her, half asleep already. You said you had a deed, she murmured. What's the land like? Low hills. Windbreak to the east. No neighbors for miles. Water? Spring-fed. Cold enough to sting your teeth. She didn't answer for a while. Then, what would you build? House small. Porch wide enough to sit through a summer storm. Smokehouse, maybe? Something to hold the winter. She leaned back, folding her arms. Never built anything that wasn't meant to hold pain. Then it's time you did. In the morning, August took Harlan's spare wagon and hitched a dun mare to the front. Harlan handed him a folded paper, sealed in wax. So you were telling the truth about the deed, Beatrice said, watching August slide it into his coat. I told you I don't lie. The wagon creaked as they loaded it. August packed tools, flour, salt, a coil of rope, and a worn Bible Harlan insisted they take. Not for preaching, he said. Pages are good for kindling if nothing else. Beatrice found an old tin kettle and tucked it beneath the seat. The boys helped gather firewood into sacks. Xander asked if they'd see another town. She told him no, not for a while. They left before noon, the sun high and dry overhead. The terrain changed as they traveled west, flatter, the trees thinning to scrub. Once, a herd of pronghorns scattered in the distance, their white rumps flashing like wind-blown linen. That evening, they camped near a bend in the river. The boys waded ankle-deep, chasing frogs. Beatrice sat on an overturned bucket, sleeves rolled, peeling potatoes with the small knife August handed her. He crouched nearby, fixing a loose strap on the wagon. "You ever fish?" "Used to. My husband had a net. We'd set it at dusk. We've got line and hooks. Could try tonight." She didn't respond right away. Then, "All right." August took Zeke with him to the bend, and Beatrice watched them go, Zeke still so thin, but his shoulders held straighter now. She turned to Xander. "Help me with the fire?" He nodded and fetched dry twigs. Later, with the fish cleaned and roasting, August sat beside her, sleeves damp, smelling faintly of river mud. Zeke leaned against his side. "He taught me how to set the hook." Beatrice stirred the pot. "He's good at teaching quiet things." August looked at her. "You're good at surviving hard ones." She didn't look away. "I'd like to stop surviving." Eventually. He didn't say anything, but his hand brushed hers where it rested on her knee. She let it stay. After supper, the boys curled under the wagon, breathing soft. August sat on a flat stone, sharpening his blade. Beatrice walked to the river, letting the cold water run over her hands. When she turned back, he was watching her. "I don't know how to be loved without needing to owe something in return," she said. "You don't know me. I want to build something with you." The whetstone stopped. "You sure?" "I am." He stood slowly, walked to her, and didn't touch her until she reached for his hand. The moon rose full over the plains, and they stood together at the edge of the water. The wind carried the scent of wild sage, and for the first time in years, she felt something settle inside her that wasn't fear. Tomorrow, they'd reach the land. Tonight, she let herself believe in it. The land was quiet when they arrived, no fence lines, no tracks, no sign of another soul for miles. Just a shallow rise of grass and stone, and the thin glint of a spring trickling through a patch of cottonwoods. The wagon creaked to a halt at the edge of a small clearing, where the soil turned dark and damp underfoot. August dismounted first, running his hand over the weathered post driven into the ground years ago. The brand carved into the wood had faded, but it was still legible, Verran. He didn't say anything. He just stood there a long time, eyes on the trees. Beatrice stepped down from the wagon, lifting Xander after her. Zeke followed on his own, gaze alert. They didn't speak either. It was the kind of quiet earned, not forced. Xander pointed toward the spring. "That where we get water?" Beatrice nodded. "We'll boil it first." August turned. "There's stone near the southern ridge. Flat enough for a foundation." Zeke walked ahead, boots crunching dry grass. "Can we build something with a window?" August looked to Beatrice. "Reckon we can." They spent the next 3 days clearing brush. August felled a few dead trees with steady swings of the axe, while Beatrice used a drawknife to strip bark for kindling. The boys carried stones, their hands raw by dusk, but they didn't complain. One afternoon, while the sun sagged low over the ridge and the air turned cooler, Beatrice found August kneeling near the edge of the spring, laying flat stones into a ring. "You trying to keep the banks from slipping?" she asked. He nodded. "If we leave it soft, it'll cave in come rain." She crouched beside him. "You always this careful?" "No. Used to be fast, careless. Broke a lot of things that way." Beatrice adjusted a stone. "You've changed." He met her eyes. "So have you." She let her hand rest briefly on his. "You don't look at me like the others did." They looked wrong. He stood, offered her his hand. She took it. When she rose, she didn't let go. That night, Xander fell asleep with a splinter in his thumb. August knelt beside him, drawing it out with the tip of a needle held steady in the firelight. Beatrice watched, arms crossed, the fire warming one side of her face. "You've done this before," she said. "A time or two. You had kin of your own?" He didn't answer at first. "There was a girl once. Not mine. But I helped raise her after her mother passed. My brother's daughter. What happened to her? Cholera, 3 winters back. She didn't say she was sorry. She just sat beside him as he wrapped Xander's thumb in a strip of clean cloth. In the days that followed, they built slow. August taught Zeke how to set a post square. Beatrice showed Xander how to braid rope from grass stems. They worked with what they had fallen: pine, river rock, and patience. One morning, Beatrice climbed the ridge alone and stood looking out over the land. August joined her not long after, his boots making little sound on the slope. "This place," she said, "feels like it was waiting." "It was." She turned to him. "Why me?" "I wasn't waiting on a face," he said. "I was waiting on someone who could weather it with me." She didn't speak for a long time. Then, "I want to plant something here. In the spring. We'll make a place for it." He reached for her hand. She let him take it, fingers twining like roots. Below, the boys chased each other near the half-built walls, their laughter rising into the open air. Beatrice looked at the man beside her, quiet, steady, not perfect, but honest, and felt something in her chest settle. Not like it used to, not like survival. Like peace. The kind you build with your own hands. And never let go. By the second week on the land, the bones of the house stood upright, 4 walls framed in raw pine, the beginnings of a roof stretched between stout beams. The boys had hammered in nails under August's watchful eye, their hands steadier now. Beatrice had sewn curtains from old feed sacks and hung them from branches to keep the wind out while they worked. The living took shape not all at once, but piece by piece, like pages turned slow. On a morning thick with fog, Beatrice sat cross-legged near the hearthstone they'd set the day before, sorting dried beans while the boys chased each other between saplings. August returned from checking the snare lines with a rabbit in hand. "You set those near the west bend this time?" she asked, brushing her hands clean on her skirt. "Far enough out to catch something. Close enough to bring it home before dusk." She nodded. "You always measure things like that." He knelt beside her, laying the rabbit on a flat rock. "I used to draw maps for trail crews. Measured everything. Water, shade, distance between camps. Is that what brought you out here?" He shook his head. "Did that after the war. Took to wandering once the crews scattered." She picked up a knife and began skinning the rabbit with slow precision. "So you went looking for a place without someone telling you where to stop?" "I didn't know what I was looking for. Not until I found you." She didn't look up, but her hands paused. "You mean that?" "I do." He reached out, setting his hand lightly on her knee. She let it stay. That evening, Zeke found a patch of wild mint near the spring and brought it back in his shirt hem. Beatrice crushed it into the stew, and the scent lifted gently in the steam. Xander fell asleep before supper ended, curled beside the hearth. Zeke followed soon after. When the boys were settled, August stepped outside to check the sky. She joined him, her shawl drawn close. The stars hung low and bright, and the wind had settled to a hush. "I thought I'd never have another night like this," she murmured. "Where no one's chasing me. Where there's nothing missing." He turned toward her. "I want to ask you something." She folded her arms, her eyes steady on his. "Go ahead." "I want to marry you." She didn't answer right away. "I don't need a church," he added. "Just your word." She stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of him cut through the cool. "You sure about tying yourself to a woman with 2 boys and a face the world turned from?" "I'm not tying myself to what you've endured. I'm tying myself to who you are." Her throat moved as she swallowed. "Then yes." He took her hand slowly, like he was still asking. They married the next morning with Zeke standing beside August and Xander holding tight to Beatrice's skirt. August carved a ring from a strip of softened pine, smoothing the edges with sand from the river bank. She wore it like gold. The weeks that followed passed in steady rhythms. The roof went up. Stones were set into the hearth. August built a porch with beams thick enough to outlast 10 winters, and Beatrice planted rosemary and yarrow along the path from the spring. The boys gathered eggs from a neighbor's brood hen gifted in trade for a day's labor, and Beatrice taught them how to boil water over coals without burning their fingers. One evening, after supper, August brought out a fiddle he'd kept wrapped in oilcloth beneath the wagon bench. "I didn't take you for a man of music," Beatrice said, brow lifting. He tuned it slow. "I don't play for crowds." "Not anymore." "Then play for me." He did soft, rough-edged notes that wandered like wind through cotton. She leaned against a porch beam, eyes closed, and listened. When he finished, she stepped close, resting her hand against the side of his neck. "We're not just surviving anymore," she said. "No," he whispered. "We're living." And they did. The seasons turned. The house filled with warmth through winter and laughter in spring. They traded with neighbors over the ridge and helped fix a fence after a summer storm. August read aloud by lamplight, his voice low and sure. Beatrice taught Xander how to mend torn seams and showed Zeke how to write his name in the dirt with a stick. They fought sometimes over how to store potatoes or when to cut hay, but it never lasted. Their love was not loud, but it held. In glances across the table. In the way August brushed her hair behind her ear without a word. In how she wrapped bread for him when he rode out to help a neighbor. One autumn morning, she found him standing barefoot on the porch, watching the fog burn off the hills. "You thinking again?" she asked, stepping beside him. "Thinking how I almost missed this." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You didn't." He drew her in, arms steady, and kissed her slow, like there was all the time in the world. Because there was. They grew old there with the boys strong and kind, the land generous, and the house always holding light. And they stayed in love quiet, unshakable, and true.